I was 28 when my own family threw me out like trash. Tonight I returned to their world wearing a borrowed dress and they didn't even recognize me. They mocked me, humiliated me, called security to throw me out again. But when the truth exploded across that ballroom, their empire crumbled in seconds. This isn't just a revenge story, it's about a woman who lost everything and built an empire in the shadows. If you love jaw-dropping twists and karma so sweet it hurts, stay with me until the end. Trust me, you won't see this ending coming. My hands were shaking as I stood outside the Crystal Grand Hotel. 5 years. It had been 5 years since I'd last walked through those golden doors. 5 years since my life was ripped apart in front of 300 witnesses. The memory hit me like a physical blow. My stepmother Catherine's venomous smile, my stepsister Veronica's fake tears, and worst of all, my father Gregory's cold eyes, as he said those words that still haunted my dreams. "You're no daughter of mine. Guards, remove this thief." I wasn't a thief. I never stole the diamond necklace they accused me of taking. But the truth didn't matter that night. What mattered was that Catherine wanted me gone, Veronica hated sharing the spotlight, and my father was too weak to stand up for me. They planted that necklace in my room, called the police, and had me dragged out of the charity gala in handcuffs. The charges were eventually dropped for lack of evidence, but by then, my reputation was destroyed. My father had already changed the locks. My college fund was gone. My credit cards were canceled. I was 23 years old, homeless, and completely alone. Those first 2 months, I lived in my car, a beat-up Honda Civic that barely ran. I parked in different spots every night because I was terrified someone would recognize me, see how far I'd fallen, and the humiliation would kill me. I survived on dollar menu items and water from public fountains. I worked 3 jobs, waitressing at a diner from 5 a.m. to noon, cleaning offices from 1 p.m. to 6, and stocking shelves at a grocery store until midnight. I was so tired that I'd sometimes fall asleep standing up, but I couldn't stop, because stopping meant thinking, and thinking meant remembering, and remembering meant drowning. But here's the thing about hitting rock bottom: you learn who you really are. And I discovered something about myself in those dark months. I was good with numbers, really good. My mother, before she died of cancer when I was 16, had been a financial advisor. She used to let me sit in her office, taught me about investments and compound interest like other mothers taught their daughters to bake. I started taking every tip I earned, sometimes $50, sometimes $100, and I began investing, small amounts at first. I'd spend my lunch breaks at the public library, reading everything I could about the stock market, about venture capital, about building wealth from nothing. My first real win came 6 months after being thrown out. I turned $300 into $10,000, then $10,000 into $50,000. I created an anonymous investment consulting firm called Phoenix Holdings. The name felt right, rising from the ashes of my old life. Within a year, I had $500,000. Within 3 years, $10 million. And now, 5 years later, I had built a $50 million fortune. Nobody knew my real name. Nobody knew Hannah Harrison. The disgraced daughter was the ghost behind Phoenix Holdings. I stayed invisible. I stayed safe. So why was I here tonight wearing a simple cream-colored dress borrowed from my roommate, standing outside the same hotel where my life ended? Because this gala was for the Children's Hospital, the place where my mother had volunteered every Saturday before cancer took her. The place where she taught me that real wealth isn't money, it's how you help people when they can't help themselves. My family now ran this charity, using it for tax breaks and social status. I'd been donating anonymously for 5 years, pouring millions into the hospital, making sure my mother's legacy actually meant something. Tonight, I decided to show up, not for revenge, just to see if they'd changed, just to see if maybe, somehow, they regretted what they'd done. I was so naive. The ballroom was exactly as I remembered: crystal chandeliers, marble floors, and people dripping in diamonds that cost more than most people's houses. I walked in quietly, trying to blend into the shadows. My dress was simple, no jewelry, barely any makeup. I looked like I didn't belong, and I knew it. But I had paid the $5,000 ticket price. I had every right to be there. That's when I saw them. Catherine stood near the bar, wearing a red dress that probably cost $20,000, her neck covered in diamonds. Veronica was beside her, showing off an enormous engagement ring, surrounded by friends who hung on her every word. And my father, Gregory Harrison, stood in the center of the room, laughing loudly, playing the generous philanthropist for the cameras. They looked happy, successful, like they hadn't destroyed someone's life and slept perfectly well afterward. Catherine walked right past me. Our eyes met for a split second, and I held my breath, waiting for recognition. But she just looked through me, the way you look through a window, and kept walking. 5 years. I'd changed my hair, lost weight from the stress, carried myself differently. But still. Your own stepmother? Veronica passed next, absorbed in her phone, and didn't even glance up. The relief and the pain hit me simultaneously. They didn't know me. I was invisible again. A waiter offered me champagne, and I took it with trembling hands. I found a quiet corner and just watched them smile and pose, watched them accept compliments for their generosity, watched my father give a speech about the importance of helping those less fortunate, and I wanted to scream, but I stayed silent. I stayed small, just like I'd learned to do. Then Veronica spotted me. I was standing near the auction table, looking at the donated items, when she approached with 2 of her friends. She didn't recognize my face, but she recognized that I didn't fit in. "Excuse me," she said, her voice sugary, sweet, and poisonous. "Are you looking for the service entrance?" "It's around back." I turned to face her, my heart pounding. "I'm a guest." Her eyes traveled down my dress and her smile turned cruel. "In that?" "Sweetie, guests don't wear department store dresses to events like this." Her friends giggled. "Did you steal the invitation?" "Oh, wait." Her eyes glittered with malice. "Is theft kind of your thing?" The word hit me like a slap. She didn't know she was talking to me, but she was still making jokes about what they'd done, about the false accusation that destroyed my life. I felt my chest tighten, but I forced my voice to stay calm. "I bought my ticket. I'm here for the charity." One of her friends whispered something and they all laughed. Veronica pulled out her phone and took my picture. "This is going to be great content. When charity cases crash charity galas. #ironic. Before I could respond, Catherine appeared. She'd been watching from across the room. "Is there a problem here?" she asked, looking at me like I was something unpleasant on the bottom of her shoe. "This woman claims she's a guest," Veronica said, "but she's clearly not dressed appropriately," Catherine finished. Her eyes narrowed as she studied my face. "Do I know you?" My breath caught. This was it. She was going to recognize me. 5 years of wondering if they ever thought about me, if they ever regretted it, if they ever... "No," Catherine said, dismissing the thought. "I don't associate with people like you." She turned to a security guard. "Please escort this woman out. She's making our guests uncomfortable. People like you." The words echoed in my head. After everything, after 5 years of clawing my way back to life, I was still just people like you to her. The security guard approached, and I saw my father across the room, finally noticing the commotion. He started walking over, and for a moment, just a moment, I thought maybe he would recognize me. Maybe he would see his daughter and realize what he'd done. "What's going on here?" Gregory asked, his voice carrying the authority of a man used to being obeyed. "Just removing an uninvited guest, Mr. Harrison," the security guard said. My father looked at me, really looked. I stared back, willing him to see me, to know me. "Do I know you?" he asked. My voice came out as a whisper. "You should." He frowned, already losing interest. "Are you a vendor? A reporter?" I couldn't breathe. He was looking right at me, his daughter, his only child with his first wife, the girl he used to call his princess, and he saw nothing, just an inconvenience to be removed. "Just escort her out," he said, waving his hand dismissively. "We have an important announcement to make." The guard took my arm, and I felt the room spinning. This was it. I was being thrown out again, history repeating itself. Veronica was filming on her phone, narrating for her social media followers. This is what happens when people try to crash events they can't afford. Security handles it. Catherine had already turned away, bored. My father was walking back to his friends, the interaction already forgotten. I was being dragged toward the exit, my vision blurry with tears I refused to let fall, when the lights suddenly went dark. The entire ballroom plunged into darkness, and confused murmurs rippled through the crowd. Then a single spotlight illuminated the stage, and the master of ceremonies stepped up to the microphone. "Ladies and gentlemen, if you could please take your seats. We have a very special announcement regarding tonight's donations." The security guard paused, unsure whether to continue removing me or wait. I stood there, frozen at the edge of the ballroom, my heart hammering so hard I thought everyone could hear it. The MC began reading the donor list. "The Sterling Group has generously contributed $100,000. Applause. The Martinez Foundation, $75,000. More applause. Then, the Harrison Family Foundation, $75,000. My father, Catherine, and Veronica stood together and took a bow. The applause was thunderous. They were glowing, soaking in the admiration. Catherine waved like royalty. Veronica posted immediately to her social media. My father's chest was puffed with pride. This was their moment, their charity, their reputation. "Now," the MC continued, his voice dropping to something more serious, "for the past 5 years, this hospital has been blessed with an extraordinary benefactor. Someone who has given more than all our other contributors combined." The screen behind him lit up with a number, $12 million. The crowd gasped. People started whispering, looking around, trying to figure out who had that kind of money. Catherine leaned toward my father, confused. Even from across the room I could read her lips. "Who is that?" "This incredible individual," the MC said, "has funded our pediatric cancer wing." My mother's wing. The one she dreamed about before she died. Our maternal health center, our research facilities, and full medical school scholarships for 200 students. This person has changed countless lives while remaining completely anonymous. My father was frowning now, doing calculations in his head. Catherine looked worried. They were realizing that someone had outshone them at their own event. "Tonight," the MC announced, "this benefactor has agreed to reveal her identity." The word "her" sent another wave of whispers through the crowd. "Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome the founder and CEO of Phoenix Holdings, Ms. Hannah Harrison." The spotlight swung away from the stage and landed directly on me, still standing at the exit, the security guard's hand still on my arm. The silence was deafening. I couldn't move, couldn't breathe. 300 pairs of eyes locked onto me, and then I saw their faces, my family's faces, as the realization hit them like a freight train. Catherine's hand flew to her mouth. The champagne glass Veronica was holding slipped from her fingers and shattered on the marble floor. My father went completely white, then red, his mouth opening and closing like a fish out of water. The security guard immediately released my arm and stepped back. People started standing up, their expressions shifting from confusion to shock to horror as they remembered. The disgraced daughter, the thief, the one thrown out 5 years ago, she was back, and she was the reason this hospital was still standing. I started walking, not toward the exit, toward the stage. Every step felt like I was walking through water. The crowd parted like the Red Sea, people backing away, whispers exploding all around me. "That's his daughter, the one they accused. Oh my God, she's been the donor this whole time. Phoenix Holdings, that's Gregory's biggest investor." That last whisper made my father's face drain of color even more, because it was true. Phoenix Holdings had been quietly buying up shares of Harrison Industries for the past 2 years. I now owned 40% of his company. I was his boss, and he'd just tried to throw me out like trash. I reached the stage and climbed the stairs. The hospital director was there, smiling warmly, genuinely grateful. He didn't know the whole story. He just knew that I'd saved his hospital. "Ms. Harrison, we're so honored to finally meet you." I took the microphone. My hands had stopped shaking. I looked out at the crowd, and finally I let myself look at them, my family huddled together near the bar, looking like their world was ending. 5 years ago, I said, my voice steady and clear, I was thrown out of this hotel. Out of this event. I pointed directly at them. By them. The whispers grew louder. People were pulling out phones, some filming, some frantically searching for the old news articles. I was accused of stealing jewelry I never touched. I was disowned by my father. I looked at Gregory, and he couldn't meet my eyes. Without a trial, without proof, without a single question about whether I was telling the truth, I was 23 years old, and I was left with nothing. No money, no home, no family. Catherine tried to speak, but no sound came out. Veronica had tears streaming down her face, but not from remorse, from fear. I slept in my car for 2 months, I continued. I worked 3 jobs just to eat once a day. I was so tired that I'd fall asleep on the bus and miss my stop. I was so hungry that I'd steal ketchup packets from restaurants to have something to eat with my bread. I was so alone that I'd go days without speaking to another human being. The room was completely silent now, even the waiters had stopped moving. But I survived. And I built something from nothing. Phoenix Holdings isn't just an investment firm. It's proof that you can't destroy someone by taking away their money or their name. You can only destroy them if they let you. The hospital director stepped forward with a tablet, projecting new information onto the screen: financial documents, ownership papers. What Ms. Harrison hasn't mentioned is that Phoenix Holdings owns 40% of Harrison Industries, making her the majority shareholder. She's been the company's primary investor for 2 years. My father's legs actually buckled. Someone caught his arm to steady him. His empire, the company his grandfather built, was in my hands, had been for years, and he never knew. But I wasn't done. The jewelry I was accused of stealing? I pulled out my phone and connected it to the projector. Security footage from 5 years ago filled the screen, grainy but clear enough. It showed Veronica entering my bedroom when I wasn't there, hiding the diamond necklace under my pillow, then leaving and calling Catherine, then both of them calling the police. Veronica screamed, "That's fake!" She edited it. "Digital forensics certified," I said calmly. "I hired a team of investigators 3 years ago. They recovered this from the hotel's backup servers. The timestamp is accurate. The metadata is clean. I've had this evidence for 3 years." I paused. "I've been waiting." The crowd erupted. People were shouting questions. Reporters who'd been covering the gala were suddenly swarming. But I held up my hand, and somehow they quieted. "I could have destroyed you years ago," I said, looking at my father. "I could have sent this to the police, had Veronica arrested for false accusation and evidence tampering. I could have released it to the media and watched your reputation burn. But I wanted to wait. I wanted to see if you'd ever feel guilty, if you'd ever try to find me, to apologize, to make it right." Gregory's voice was hoarse. "Hannah, please." "You had 5 years," I cut him off. 5 years to wonder where I was. If I was okay? If I was alive? And you never once tried to find out? My voice cracked. "You weren't even curious." I turned to the hospital director. "I'm calling an emergency board meeting of Harrison Industries. As majority shareholder, I'm exercising my right to remove Gregory Harrison as CEO, effective immediately." The crowd gasped again. My father stepped forward. "Hannah, you can't. The company has been embezzling from its own charity," I said, and pulled up more documents, bank statements, transfer records. For 5 years, my father had been skimming money from the Harrison Family Foundation, using it for personal expenses while claiming tax deductions. "I have proof of fraud, tax evasion, and embezzlement. The authorities already have copies of these files. You'll be investigated starting Monday morning." Catherine finally found her voice, shrill with panic. "You can't do this! We're family!" I laughed, and it sounded bitter even to my own ears. "You stopped being my family when you chose your lifestyle over the truth, when you framed me to get rid of me because I was an inconvenience, when you spent 5 years living off money that, as it turns out, came from me." That stopped her cold. "What?" Phoenix Holdings has been propping up Harrison Industries for 2 years with strategic investments and loans. Every vacation you took, every dress you bought, every diamond you wore, it came from dividends paid by my company. You've been living off my money while thinking I was probably dead in a gutter somewhere." The look on Catherine's face was almost worth everything. Almost. I turned to Veronica, who was trembling. "You destroyed my reputation with lies. Let me show you what truth does to yours." I pulled up her social media history, posts she thought she'd deleted, screenshots of her mocking charity recipients, selling donated designer goods online, making fun of the poor people at fundraising events. Her fiancé standing beside her went pale as he read the posts. Then his face hardened. He took off the engagement ring from her finger without a word and walked away. Just like that. "Your engagement?" I said softly. "He was with you for the Harrison money." "Which no longer exists in your branch of the family tree?" Veronica collapsed into a chair, sobbing. But I felt nothing. No satisfaction, no victory, just emptiness. "You have 2 choices," I said to my father. "Option 1, I press charges. Full investigation, criminal trial, you'll probably go to prison." His face crumpled. "Option 2, you resign from Harrison Industries. You return every penny you stole from the charity. You disappear from public life, and you never ever use the Harrison name for business again." "Hannah," he whispered, and for the first time I heard him say my name in 5 years. "I'm your father." "You stopped being my father the night you called me a thief," I said. My voice was steady, but tears were finally falling. "You threw me away like I was nothing. You chose them over me. You didn't even ask for my side of the story." "I was wrong," he said. And he was crying now, too. "I was so wrong. Please, Hannah, Sign the papers," I interrupted. "I'm giving you more mercy than you gave me. Take it and go." He signed. Right there, in front of everyone. His hands were shaking so badly he could barely hold the pen, but he signed away his company, his reputation, his empire. Catherine was removed from every charity board, every social committee. Veronica's influencer career was imploding in real time as people shared the screenshots. The family that had ruled this city's social scene for 3 generations was destroyed in less than 30 minutes. And I'd done it without raising my voice once. After the chaos died down and people finally started leaving, awkwardly, not sure whether to congratulate me or avoid me, I found myself alone on the balcony. The city lights stretched out below me, and I felt so tired. Bone-deep tired. I'd won. I'd gotten everything I'd worked for. The revenge I'd spent 5 years building toward had been perfect, so why did I feel so hollow? "Miss Harrison?" A small voice behind me. I turned to see a teenage girl in a formal dress that was slightly too big, obviously borrowed. She had a scarf wrapped around her head, a cancer patient. "I'm Sophie. I just wanted to say thank you. You paid for my treatment. The doctors said I only had a few months, but your donation funded the experimental therapy that saved my life. I wouldn't be here without you." She hugged me, and I felt something break inside. I hugged her back and cried, really cried, for the first time in 5 years. Not for what I'd lost, not for what I'd won, but for this. For the fact that my pain had somehow turned into something that saved this girl's life. "Thank you," I whispered back. "Thank you for surviving." When she left, I stayed on the balcony a while longer. The hospital director came out to find me. "We'd like to announce a new initiative in your name," he said gently. "Full scholarships for foster children and at-risk youth who want to study medicine. Kids who the system has given up on. We thought you might appreciate that." I nodded, unable to speak. Because that's what I'd been. A kid the system gave up on. A daughter thrown away. As I finally left the hotel that night, I passed my father one last time. He was sitting on a bench outside, his head in his hands. Catherine and Veronica were gone, already starting to distance themselves from the sinking ship. He looked up as I walked by, and our eyes met. "I'm sorry," he said. Just that. No excuses, no justifications. I stopped, and for a moment, I wanted to say something cutting, something that would hurt him the way he'd hurt me. But instead, I just felt tired. I hope you learn to live with what you've done, I said. Because I had to. I walked away and didn't look back. I'm 28 years old. I've been homeless. I've been betrayed by the people who were supposed to protect me. I've built an empire from nothing but survival and spite. Tonight, I destroyed the family that destroyed me. And you know what I learned? Revenge doesn't heal you. It doesn't fix the broken parts or erase the pain. But what it does do is give you the power to make sure the cycle stops, to make sure that kids like Sophie have a chance, to make sure that no one else has to sleep in their car and wonder if they'll survive the night. That's the real victory. Not the money, not watching them fall, but knowing that my worst days turned into someone else's best chance. If this story gave you chills, hit that like button. Subscribe because I have more stories about people who rose from the ashes. Comment and tell me, is revenge ever worth it, or is living well really the best revenge? I read every single comment. See you in the next one, where karma strikes even harder.